Welcome to A Mason's Work, the podcast where we review Masonic symbols and illustrate how they can be used to solve problems in everyday life. With your host, Brian Mattocks, a proud member of the Craftsman Online Media Network.
So yesterday I said we'd talk about how to interrupt the meta conversation without kind of blowing up the room or damaging relationships. And that's today. So before we get into the techniques and the ways we might solve this problem or address the challenge, because it's not really a problem, it's not a problem until it becomes one, again, I want to reiterate that the cost of interrupting here isn't always obvious in the moment. The meta conversation feels like it's going nowhere, and it usually is, but that doesn't mean it's not doing something. The meta conversation is not static, it's moving. And every time you take a statement of the way the world should be if only things were different, every time that sort of makes it through the conversational dialogue, that feeling begins to fester into fact. It's this soft, squishy perspective that begins to edify into this thick fog for the conversation. And then that fog turns into a mire, and that mire turns into an implied assumption about the way the world works that everyone in the conversation collectively absorbs. It becomes a fact. It becomes a felt fact. And this is where stuff gets very difficult, because you can't then address it when it has hit that level of communal sort of reality. Change at that point becomes much more difficult to move through. So when it comes time to do this, to make the changes in the conversation that don't turn into violence or madness, the way you have to do that is kind of one of three approaches. I'm going to put them in order, but your situation may vary. The first order is this. First things first, whenever somebody's expressing a feeling, it's really productive to name that feeling. It seems like you're really frustrated. You sound upset. This seems really important to you. Any of those kind of sentiments express and acknowledge the felt reality of the moment that someone may be having. You'll find that alone oftentimes moves the conversation to a different level, because sometimes people complain because they just want to felt heard. When you move past the acknowledgement of feelings and into the next part of the solution, you want to then immediately try and drive to an exact in-the-moment behavior that could help solve the problem. Wow, you sound really frustrated. What's the thing that I can do in the next hour that might help alleviate that frustration? What's the one thing you could do to prevent you from having this feeling again next time we talk? If we were all to take one step forward towards the objectives we're talking about, what would that look like? And in doing that, we move from the language of these projected systems and projected realities back to internalizing the locus of control. You always want to do this as a first resort, if you can. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes the lift is simply too great. The grievance is too entrenched. The room is too invested in the commiseration. And I think the next phase of this is naming where the conversation is in the grand scheme of conflict resolution. say something like, hey, I want to flag something right now. I think we've moved from solving this problem to describing it, and I'm not sure that any additional description is going to help me change my behavior. Can we talk about ways that we might do that? It's a softer drive to action. It's a calling out the communal sort of vibe you're creating with the people in the room. And that in and of itself as well allows you to essentially hold the conversation accountable and not the people in it. There's not a ton of benefit to pointing to a specific individual in the room and saying, you keep talking trash. Why do you hate what we're trying to do? Right? Like that's never going to help. So when we talk about the conversational status or the situation that you're experiencing, you always want to be mindful, particularly in group settings, of calling out the conversation as the thing that is having a bad behavior, as opposed to the individuals in the conversation. If you need to talk to somebody privately about how they're contributing to the collective narrative, that's a great use of a private conversation. Your last step is the step taken by the fellow craft masons in the third degree, and that is to withdraw. You can recant and say, this is a conversation that I don't feel is productive, and for my health and for what I think is the best course of action, I'm going to have to take a step back. This is an okay response. It's not the first line of defense. It's not the place I would go immediately. It does have some consequences associated with it. However, you can always control how much you contribute to it. And if you can't change it, if you don't have the social capital to venture in a conversation to say these things or to take these actions, withdrawal is entirely appropriate. And sometimes you don't even have to explain that. You can just stop contributing, and that's okay. As you go through this process of trying to change the narrative from the meta conversation to something that's action driven and helps move your environment forward, your lodge, your home life, your, conversations with your significant other, kids, every conversation you're ever going to get involved in has this sort of meta risk. And these processes are great ways to start mitigating that meta conversation and moving your collective environment forward. We'll talk a little bit more over the next couple of days about other ways that you can take this and run with it and move that forward to create better outcomes for your family and the people around you.
The views represented in this podcast are those of the speaker alone and are not representative of any grand or subordinate lodge.
Hi, Brian here. I wanted to thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you have any suggestions or guidance for further episodes you'd like to see or hear, whatever the case may be, please don't hesitate to reach out to me at amasonswork.com, and we will try and incorporate your suggestions into a future recording. Thanks.
Freemasonry teaches us that the true work is within, a lifelong journey of reflection, discipline, and discovery. At A Mason's Work, we help Masons bring out their best selves through meaningful self-inquiry and symbolic practice. From personal reflection to lodge engagement, we offer tools that turn symbols into action. Visit us at amasonswork.com. The work is within. The time is now.